What's happening, everybody? First episode, very excited to finally start talking boxing with everyone. But before I get into it, I'll just give everyone a quick introduction on who I am so that you know my background in the sport and you can decide if you even care about what I have to say on the topic. My name is Schobitz. I myself am a professional boxer from Austria. I was a national champion as an amateur at 178 back in 2015, moved to the States. I haven't fought in a few years and decided to move to New York City to get back in the ring. And now that we are all sitting around in these crazy times, I just figured if I can't fight myself at the moment, might as well just start a podcast and share my opinions with everyone else. So please feel free to comment on the videos. I would love to hear what everyone has to say. Get into debates. This is meant for that, to bring us all together. With that being said, a lot of boxing this week, more than I even thought there was. I had no idea Showtime was putting on a card as well up until 3-4 days ago. Was very excited when I saw it. Chriscolbert is a bad man. We also had Anthony Joshua, obviously fighting Colbert, and we had Shakur Stevenson fighting, I believe his name was Toka Clary. I want to start with Chriscolbert. We live in very interesting times. Normally a 23-year-old kid with pink hair, crazy flashy style, speed would be the talk of everyone in the sport. But we have so many good prospects coming up at 130, 135 that he's kind of been in the back seat a little bit. And I think it's a good thing and a bad thing, because I think he deserves more praise than he has gotten. But it's a good thing because I also feel like that he hasn't gotten the hype job, which has made him more focused throughout these first 12 professional fights he's had. I remember seeing him for the first time in Counterpunch 2017, and back then it was called Lil B-Hop. Right, he had just signed with Al Heyman. And he gave you this, he was a typical super talented young athlete that, he got all the skills in the world, so he doesn't need to work hard. And we could see him back then, getting in the ring with Payano and getting beaten up in sparring. And while Payano was getting ready for, I believe it was Rashid Warren. And since then, in his fights, he's gotten hype, obviously, because of Al Heyman. He has gotten some exposure, but not enough to really be considered a hype job. Not enough to really just, for everyone to talk about him, because he was coming up with, Shakur Stevenson, Teofimo Lopez, Ryan Garcia was obviously gotten all the press, and Devin Haney. I believe Chriscolbert has the same amount of talent that all of these young guys have, showing great. I mean, this fight was against a tough, durable guy in Jaime Arboleda, who had, real power at 130, and I was very excited to see Colbert just changing it up. He started boxing, moving around a lot, very slick defense, but then started to push a little bit as the rounds went on. You could see him pushing a little bit more every round that went on, just a little bit more, and just really wanting to get his guy out of there. I believe that's something that I believe is a quality that a lot of guys lack that have that kind of skill set. We saw it, we actually saw something similar on the Stevenson undercard with Rovisei Ramirez in his 7th fight. Another guy, extremely talented, very slick, very, very good defense, great head movement, countering, but just his foot was never on the gas. Colbert didn't approach his fight like that. He went little by little, every round, he chipped away a little bit, threw more shots, more combinations, stayed in the pocket longer, got his guy out of there. I believe he has all the tools. His only problem, or his biggest problem, is called Shakur Stevenson, to be honest. Shakur is a beast. That's it. I say same thing Timothy Bradley has been saying for the last, 6-7 fights. Every time Shakur Stevenson fights, he says same thing. In 4 or 5 years' time, pound for pound, the best in the world. I agree. But more on that later. I wanna stay on the topic of Chris Colbert and that entire card. I believe Chris Colbert is a little bit behind Stevenson in terms of his development. I think he needs a little bit. He needs 1 or 2 more fights to really get to world level. I think he can compete with them now, but I would like to see him doing the things he did yesterday against Arboleda. I want to see him do those things on the world stage, and I believe if he gets put in against the elite right now, he's gonna have hard fights, which he might win, he might lose, but I don't think I don't think his development is ready for him to truly utilize all of his skills over 12 rounds against a world-class operator. So I think that within a year's time, years to 18 months, I think we're all going to be talking about Chris Colbert as one of the top guys at 130, and he's going to be in the mix with Shakur, with Lopez, with Ryan Garcia, because he also, physically wise, you can see he's still a kid. He still hasn't really filled his body out. He has the size, he has the long arms. Once he fills that out, he's for sure going to go up to 135, 140. But the other guy that I saw on that Showtime card that really impressed me is Richardson Hitchens. I honestly hadn't seen too much about him before Saturday night. But one little side note that I have to make is that Floyd, since he started his promotional company, and since he really started signing fighters in the beginning, I didn't really like the job that he was doing. I didn't really like the fighters he was signing. I always thought it was more a thing of like, he was signing guys that looked up to him, and that he was signing yes men, I think now he really has changed around. I think, with Tank being obviously the top dog in that stable, I think he's been doing a much better job in recent years, and I also think he is of all the big promoters, because I think you have to consider Floyd at this point. You have to consider Mayweather Promotions one of the biggest promotional companies. Obviously not Top Rank or Golden Boy, but for sure right next to DiBella and Main Event Promotions in that sort of level, class, you might say. I think he's stepped up his game with fighters, but he's also stepped up his game matching his fighters. I think he is really pushing his guys to the limit with his matchups, especially his new prospects. I mean, you had a month and a half ago, you had Rolly fighting, and although I personally think he lost that fight, I mean, this kid's been doing this for 7 years, and he's already fighting, you know, top opposition in his 12th fight. Floyd clearly saying, you know what, fuck it, just put them in. If they have it, they'll win. If they don't have it, they won't win. I think Hitchens yesterday was the same, you know, prime example. Argenis Mendes, the guy who's been around, who's been a world champion, to throw him in there, to throw your guy in there with 11 pro fights, it's a risky move. But Hitchens came through with a phenomenal jab, great footwork, great awareness, great defensive skills. He just all in all put on a performance that is gonna, you know, really, that fight, you know, against Argenis Mendes, that counts like, it's the same, that gives you the same amount of experience that 3, 4, 5 fights get you against lower level opposition. So you see Hitchens in his 12th fight doing things, you know, slipping, countering, pulling, countering, moving his feet, knowing when to put the pressure, when to up the pressure, when to step off the gas, knowing when to basically just relax, take a breather, and knowing who you're in there with. You know, you could really see Hitchens evolving with the rounds. Normally you fight, or at that stage of a career, normally you fight, you learn from your fight, the next fight you come back and you improve. You could see Hitchens going through these situations in this fight on Saturday. He came out fast, he came out dominating with the jab, he came out moving, landing counters, landing straight right hands. And then in the middle rounds, you could see him you could see him thinking, you could see him wondering, why is this guy still here? What, you know, he was going through phase in the fight where he was clearly in distress, but he learned, he pulled himself together, caught a second win. You can't even call it a second win, but made adjustments. That's the word. He was making adjustments as the fight was going on, and props to him for showing the grit of being able to overcome this adversity and keep going forwards, where other guys will just crumble. They're used to having it their way, and then they fight someone better, and they don't know what to do when this guy is able to take the shots, is able to come back with something, counters them with moves that they normally counter lesser opposition with. You know, that's something that you don't learn that in the gym. You find that out on the night. You have it, great. If you don't have it, then, you know, tough luck. It's not for you. I believe that Hitchens has a great future. I already put him down on my phone, and I'm gonna, you know, watch plenty of footage on him, because I was very happy with that. Thankfully, I was able to see it on the TV, because the ESPN event got obviously pushed back because of the football game, so I didn't have to be watching Hitchens on my phone and Verdejo on the TV. Which, by the way, on a side note, that whole thing of pushing back boxing cards, or pushing back the fights on a boxing card because of another event that you're broadcasting, I think it's absurd. A card shouldn't start at 11 p.m. and the main event, as a fighter, fighting at midnight local time, 2 a.m. almost. 2 a.m. almost on the Eastern time. I think that's a bit excessive. I don't think that's necessary. But I understand the move by ESPN. But anyway, going back, the third fight on that Showtime card, Ronald Ellis against Korobov. Korobov is a talented guy. He had some great, his fight against Andy Lee, I got it that he didn't get that world title in that fight. That was it. But I think since then, so many injuries, and now, came out against Chris Eubank Jr., was doing a great job, ruptured his rotator cuff, tore his rotator cuff. Now Achilles tendon in his 4th round. Again, was doing a good job coming out, but once your body just doesn't want it anymore, then you need to think. I think Colbert is at the end of the line. Unfortunately, I think I'm sure he made good money, just retire. But I think it's it for him. Next up, we had ESPN. Now, ESPN was an interesting card. Was, in my opinion, all in all, the best card of the weekend. We had obviously shakur Stevenson in the main event. Then we had Verdejo against Nakatani, and the first fight on the main card, I believe. Let me see, I forgot that. We had Berlanga. I completely forgot about him. It was a quick affair. Berlanga fights. I find it interesting to watch him fight. He fights in my weight class. So obviously, as a fighter, when you see other guys in your weight class that are coming up, you're interested. You want to see what they're about. And I would personally love to get some rounds in with him. I would love to get in the ring and see what it's about, what he's about. Obviously, I'm not calling him out for a fight. He's way further in his career than I am. It's completely different. But I train in Brooklyn. He trains in Brooklyn. He's from Brooklyn. I don't know if he trains out of Brooklyn, but I would love to the reason why I say this isn't because I don't think he's any good, but it's just because I would like to be able to judge how good he actually is. I don't know why Top Rank keeps matching him with guys that are going to come forward and trade with him. It makes no sense, especially if they say that they want to see him go more rounds. Put him in there with a guy that knows how to box. Put him in there with a guy that moves a little bit, that's going to make him set up his right hand. He has freakish power. He hits super hard. Because, at the end of the day, and that's something that, that can't be learned. The type of power that Berlanga carries is something that you either have or you don't have. And he's got just power to give away. He lands shots and these guys crumble. That's something that has nothing to do with the level of opposition. If he catches any super middleweight in the world clean on the face with a shot that they don't see coming, everyone is going to fall, because that kind of power, again, is something you have or you don't have. My problem with Berlanga is he's ranked in the top 10 in the world by all these organizations. He's never fought a guy in the top 10. He's never even fought anyone who knows how to move a little bit. Every time he fights someone, and this guy was, same example, Ulises Sierra. He was coming in, and I tried finding some tape on him before the fight because I wanted to go in seeing if this is a guy who's going to give him rounds or not. But there was just a highlight reel of one of his fights that was on Showtime, but even there you could see this is not a guy who moves. He's not a guy that will jab, move, who has any kind of decent head movement, who has footwork, who's going to make Berlanga, who knows how to survive if he gets hit, who knows how to get out of a first round alive to begin with. This is a guy who went in and traded right hands with this dude. And how can this guy, the opposition might be getting better. He might be knocking out guys like this opponent. He might be better. Sierra might be better than Bellews. He might be his best opponent to date, but styles make fights, and he went into the ring wanting to trade with a guy who had more, he might be the hardest puncher in the division, outside of maybe Canelo Alvarez. But these are things that, again, me saying that, some people, someone might say, you can't compare his power with the top super middleweights of the division. He hasn't fought anyone. Yes, he hasn't fought anyone. But again, power is universal. I mean, I can tell you, you know, I don't have that kind of power. If I hit, guys don't crumble like that. When I hit them, I have to put way more shots on someone for them to go down than Berlanga does. But can he set it up? Because he didn't show me that on Saturday. He didn't go in with a game plan. He didn't look any better than he did the fight before or 2 fights ago. To me, the opposite. He went in wanting to knock him out in the first round. He's going in there looking to knock you out with the right hand in the first round. He doesn't want to go rounds. And that's something that worries me. And I've had this conversation, you know, with people about Deontay Wilder before. And obviously, I mean, Berlanga is a much more polished fighter than Wilder is. He's technically much more sound. He has much better fundamentals than Wilder does. But Wilder was doing the same thing. You know, he keeps saying, before every fight, he goes and he says, Fury needs to be perfect for 12 rounds. I need to be perfect for 12 seconds. What that tells me is that it doesn't matter how a fight goes, you're just eventually going to end it with your right hand. We saw how it went for Wilder last time around. We even saw how it went for Wilder the first time around, which he found him twice, and he got a draw, but that fight shouldn't have been a draw. Fury won 10 out of 12 rounds in that fight, right? So, but you saw Wilder doing that. Same thing with Ortiz. On the second fight against Ortiz, Wilder was losing every second of every round of the fight until Ortiz came back and knocked him. Until Wilder came back and just fucking landed a right hand and knocked him out. You know, Wilder has the physical attributes to throw these hands and to land them. But the moment a guy came that he didn't have those physical advantages over, he wasn't able to land it. Now, Berlanga's, to me, again, he's a better fighter than Wilder. He has a jab, he has more head movement. His feet aren't 15 yards apart. He stands compact, his hands are high. But him knocking out guys in the first round, fight after fight after fight, I mean, I can guarantee you Benavidez isn't going to go down. David Benavidez is not going to go down with the right hand like that. Caleb Plant, you're not going to land that right hand on him like that. Callum Smith is fucking 6'3" and has a jab that's like fucking this long. You're not going to land your right hand on him like that by lunging in. While Canelo Alvarez, I'm not even going to make a comment on that. But he needs to start fighting guys that are going to make him miss, and then are going to make him pay for that, so that he learns how to make these adjustments. Because he's, you know, at this point where he is in the ranking, he has to start. He has to start, because if you're in the top 10 in the world, you need to be fighting other top 10 guys. But don't put him in there with Caleb Truax, for example, who, same thing, is he can come forward, probably knock him out. Maybe not in the first round, but maybe in the second round, in the third round. You know, I mean, I would love to see Berlanga in there with a guy who's top 10, with a guy who, you know, who has movement, with a guy who has some sort of boxing skills. Maybe a guy like Steven Nelson. Steven Nelson has great boxing skills. I mean, he's been around for a while. He doesn't, you know, he seems to be fighting a position that's around the same level as Berlanga. Maybe a little bit better, but I think that would be a great fight. Or you can put him in there with someone like who would another good fighter? Another good 168 pounder. Uzcategui might be a bit too far. It might be a bit too soon for a guy like Uzcategui, but or Avni Yildirim, who was gonna fight Canelo, but hey, tough dude, strong guy, tough guy, but a bit shorter. Can get knocked out. Was knocked out quickly by Chris Eubank. Come forward. He's a very come forward kind of fighter. And we're going to see if Berlanga has a jab, if Berlanga can box going backwards a little bit, if he has something other than just an overhand right and a left hook. I think that'd be a really good fight. Mike Gavronsky would also be a good one. He's been in there with plenty of great fighters, such as he gave a few rounds. He gave Jesse Hart a few rounds. But yeah, guys that have a little bit of a skill set. Actually, Mike Gavronsky wouldn't give him. He would probably get knocked out too by him. He just has. I mean, Berlanga just has too much fucking power. You need to give him someone that can move, someone who has punch resistance. I mean, Rocky Fielding might be a good one for Berlanga. Gives him height, different kind of problem. Has some sort of movement. But yeah, I think that it as soon as that should happen as soon as the next fight. I believe the moment this is, it's Monday, they need to, his team needs to sit down and see how they can get him closer to winning a title. I think he has the goods. He has, when you have that kind of physical abilities, you're privileged, right? And I think that, he's very young, but he needs to be edging closer towards the top of the food chain. You can't just fight a bunch of bums and then, you get a fight. You get a fight for a world title. That's what Sauerland does. That's how we saw Vincent Feigenbutz. I don't know if anyone remembers him. He fought Plant fairly recently. Plant got rid of him in 8. But this is a guy who has no idea how to box, who fought 20 bums and got a world title shot because Sauerland knows everyone in the WBA. I wouldn't want to see that happen to Berlanga. I don't like to see that happen in general, but I think, Berlanga is a guy who has genuine talent, who has crazy physical abilities and needs to be matched a little bit harder. He needs to fight a different style so that he can finally get closer to that world level. On the undercard, on the prelims of the ESPN card, I didn't watch the whole thing because I was watching the Showtime card, and I was also watching old footage on Joshua. So I didn't really see the ESPN prelims. I did watch the Ramirez fight, the Rob A.C. Ramirez fight back, and I was very impressed. This is the last guy to beat Shakur Stevenson. He's fighting at 126 now, but I think I really like what Salas is doing with him. His mechanics are phenomenal. His mechanics are just, I recently followed this Instagram, this boxing podcast on Instagram called Guard Your Grills Boxing, and he made he said something about Shakur Stevenson, Colbert, regarding their last fights. He said that they do things. They're fundamentals. They're doing things that other guys don't even know how to do. Where the people might think, these guys are just opponents. But these older guys, these guys that don't have that elite talent, they don't even know, that's not even in their system. It's not even in their arsenal. They don't even know how to do it. And these two guys, again, Chris Colbert, like I said, he knows how to do all these things. He's already doing all these things, but to do them against world class, you need to be built up a certain way, and I think Chris Colbert is 1-2 fights away from being able to showcase these skills against world class. And I think Robeisy Ramirez, he's another guy who has those skills. 2 times Olympic gold medalist. He lost his pro debut, which is very strange for a guy with that kind of a pedigree, but he's come back since, had 5 fights this year, and he's looked better and better in every fight. on Saturday, with the things he showed on Saturday, right? He really now finally is transitioning, and this is something that a lot of Cuban fighters don't know how to do. This is something that, because they're used to going 3 rounds so long. I mean, they all have 300-400 amateur fights, so they go 3 rounds, and after 3 rounds, their pace starts to slow down. But Ramirez was doing the opposite. He started nice, good head movement, very, very good control of distance, right? I mean, you could really see he was slipping, making the guy miss by this much. Not by this much or by this much, by this much, staying in range. The moment he started to get the timing right, he was coming back with counters, countering, slipping, countering with the same hand. I mean, things that are so advanced, that obviously he learned to do back in Cuba, but is now finally, he's finding his spots to do them in the professional fight, in the professional game, right? Because when you have 12 rounds, this is, I tell this to people when I am teaching them how to box, is when you have 12 rounds, if you land one hard right hand or one hard left hook in a round, that's normally enough. That's normally enough to kind of set the tone for a round. We're not always throwing hard shots. We're not always going all out. When most of the shots fighters that are fighting 6, 8, 10, 12 rounds, they're not throwing everything hard, because you would never have the energy to throw everything hard for 12 rounds. So you pick, where am I going to throw a hard shot? Where am I going to throw a quick shot? And Ramirez was doing that so well. He knew he was walking, then he was jump, then he was shuffling. He would move his head. Sometimes he would block. Sometimes he would slip. So he knew he was very good at managing his energy, and he was fighting at a pace at which he could fight 15 rounds until he landed that shot. He landed that shot on the 6th round, and then he turned up the pace. I think the stoppage might have been a little bit early, but he stepped it up right after Manny Robles had said, I don't think he carries the power at 126. And I mean, he might not be a concussive puncher. He might have less power than Shakur Stevenson does, but he has the tools, and he's learning to calibrate his movement so that he can do all the things that he does, the countering, the slipping, the moving, over 12 rounds. He's changing up his offense. He has every punch in the book. He counters with an uppercut, he counters with a straight left, he counters with a right hook, he throws him to the head, to the body. He's now learning how to put these things together in a way that you can fight at a good pace for 12 rounds. And I'm very excited to see him rematch Shakur Stevenson, because I believe that's inevitable. They have the same promoter. Shakur Stevenson is at 130 right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if Ramirez went up to 130, hopefully before Shakur moves up to 135. But I mean, him with Stevenson and Colbert at that 130-pound division, I mean, it's exciting. Ramirez is a bit older. I mean, it might not happen, but I can see the reason why I think it will happen is because Shakur lost him, and I think Shakur will be genuinely interested in avenging that fight. I see Shakur as that kind of guy. I think that's a little chip on his shoulder that he's gonna have, and he's gonna. The moment someone starts talking about this fight, which will probably happen when Ramirez wins his first world title, I think from then on, people are gonna talk about it, because Shakur lost, and Shakur is gonna have his haters, and the haters are gonna say, "Why don't you fight Ramirez? He beat you already. Fight him again." People are always looking for negative shit to say. But I'm really excited about that. Then we had another one that I was pumped for, which I was kind of disappointed by, is Verdejo. Great fight. I mean, wasn't disappointed by the fight. The fight was phenomenal. To be honest, that one I was watching. I was watching Colbert on the TV, and I had Verdejo on the phone, so I didn't really get and Colbert was putting on the heat. So I wasn't very focused on Verdejo. I rewatched it again this morning though, and I'm bummed, man. I'm bummed because I think Verdejo, since he came out of the amateurs, I always liked his style. I thought he was such a talented fighter. But I mean, I was writing my notes as I was watching. I was writing my notes, and my notes for Verdejo were just things that I felt, that I was seeing, and just so he's not able to keep his composure when things are going wrong, and that he just isn't world class. Those were my initial thoughts, but I hadn't actually really watched the fight. It was more of a thing of you lost, you stepped up once, you lost, you stepped up again now, and you got knocked out again. I rewatched the fight, and I changed my mind. I believe that's harsh criticism, because I do think he has elite talent. I think he has elite physical abilities too. I think that the problem with Verdejo is exactly what I was talking about Ramirez before. Ramirez is learning how to use his skill set in a way that he can do it for 12 rounds. He's it's the second 8 rounder, so he started to push. He's figuring out for himself, when can I push the pace, when can I slow down, when do I throw my shots hard. Verdejo doesn't have that, in my opinion, or not yet. Verdejo started off fucking lightning quick, dropped him, and I'm like, fuck it, he's gonna knock him out. He knocked this boy out, call out Lopez, because he did a better number on him than Lopez did, and that's how I thought it was gonna go after seeing him drop him. But once the going got tough, he got tired very quickly. He got nervous very quickly, and I think that's just memories of what happened in his previous loss, because it's the same thing. You're dominating a guy over 10 rounds, and then you got hit with, and you're tired. You get hit with a shot, you get knocked out, and I think that's Verdejo just wants to get his guys out of there. He wants to make a statement. I think he knows that in the back of his mind, he knows how he came out of there. He knows what he knows what people were expecting from him when he came out of the amateurs. He knows what people thought of him, and he knows what people think of him now. He knows that view of him has changed, and he wants to, and I think that's something that weighs on him when he fights. And I think when he starts to see he can get you out of there, then he tries to get you out of there, and when he can't, he kind of gets nervous, and he burns too much nervous energy, and then what happened to him happens. I think if Andre Ward said it perfectly. If he spoke about him so highly in the beginning, he knocks him out, figures out he can't knock him out, drops him, figures out he can't knock him out, comes back and goes back to boxing. Sticks to boxing, moves, walks around, conserves his energy, waiting for the next big one, right? I think he did that after the first knockdown. He did that after the second knockdown again, and he looked phenomenal. He looked very good. He obviously has some gaps, and he has some, sometimes he doesn't bring his jab back high enough. Sometimes he starts to overcommit. Again, he gets anxious and he overcommits, and I think those are things that, a guy like Lopez, especially with that left hook. Verdejo is throwing that left hook. He wants to rip your head off. He just rip your head off, clean off your spine. That's just, you can't throw everything like that, because, Ward said it. I think it was Ward, maybe it was Bradley. Guy like Lopez, a guy like Devin Haney, they're going to sit back and then they counter you. Nagatani had a great chin, great heart, but he's not the most prolific boxer. He's not technically the most sound, right? He was starting to land those right hands because Verdejo was throwing those left hooks and he wasn't bringing the hand back, and Nagatani was starting to land, and then that makes you tired. Plus the nervous energy you're burning, all of a sudden you find yourself in a position where you have 3 rounds to go and your legs are gone, which is what happened to him. So I think that was a fight that was, it clearly had, that fight was 2 different fights. You had round 1 through 5 where Verdejo was just dominating and looked amazing. And then round 6 through 10 where you had Nagatani coming forward and starting to see Verdejo slowing down. He started to see him maybe getting frustrated. And that's something that, you know, Verdejo also needs to learn. He needs to figure out when he can really step on the gas. I mean, we saw chriscolbert do it, right? We saw Ramirez do it too, which is, you know, they were boxing, they were landing their shots, they were boxing, but as they were landing, they increased the pressure. They were defensive minded at first, slipping, countering, moving, and little by little, they broke their guys down. You know, Colbert was obviously much more. It was much more scintillating. It was much more. It was a much bigger statement. Ramirez again probably an early stoppage, but he would have probably got him out there in the 7th round. You know, he started. He clearly saw something and switched it on, and Lopez has the same thing. And it's just, man, to be honest, it's imperative for a fighter to have, you know, to know when you can actually go all out and when you need to relax, sit back, you know. And I think he has a great trainer in Salas. I think he for sure, they're going to look back. And because this fight had 2 complete different sides, and it's a fight that's easy to analyze. It's going to be easy to point the errors, and I would like to see Verdejo fight Nagatani again. That fight would be easy to make, because Nagatani, I don't think he is with Top Rank, and I think Verdejo is going to, he has a case for a rematch. I think he should get that rematch and work on the specific mistakes he did this time around, and I think that will bring him up. I think after that he should be as well fighting a guy in the top 10. And I think that's a fight that would really get him closer to world title aspirations. And then we had the main event, Shakur Stevenson. Shakur Stevenson was by far the most impressive, put on by far the most impressive display I saw on the weekend. And although obviously he didn't knock his guy out like Colbert did or like Joshua did, but Clary was a genuine opponent who had gone 12 hard rounds with Kid Galahad, who was somewhat competitive with Kid Galahad. Kid Galahad is a very good fighter. He was unable to do anything with Shakur Stevenson. I don't remember who posted this, but they said Shakur Stevenson at 23 might be the most technically sound fighter on the planet, and I agree with that. Shakur reminds me of a young Floyd Mayweather, not from a style perspective, but from an attitude standpoint of view. Shakur Stevenson is always putting the exact amount of pressure that he knows he can put on without risking too much. He starts off with a phenomenal jab. His footwork is impeccable. You can see him move around the ring. He glides around the ring. He's always keeps that perfect distance to where he keeps you right at the end of his stick, where he takes little steps back, comes forward. He counters to the head and the body. At this moment, he's ready for anyone at 130. I would love to see him fight Oscar Valdez. I would love to see him fight anyone actually at 130. maybe Jojo Diaz. That would be a great one. But in this specific fight, I mean, he does things, right? Little things. I don't remember what round it was in, where he was in a clinch with, he was in close with Clary. He shuffles, taking a step back. He shuffles back to give him room to throw a left hand into the solar plexus, right? Now, normally you would never shuffle backwards if you're in close, because when you're shuffling, your feet are in the air. If you get hit while your feet are in the air, I mean, you have no leverage to the ground, so you're much more likely to fall over, right? When he was shuffling, at the same time as he shuffled, he just put his arm out, his elbow in front of Clary to make sure that Clary couldn't get his shots off as he was shuffling. And the moment those feet landed, he just attacked the solar plexus immediately with that left uppercut. And again, those are things that most fighters don't even know how to do. Those are little movements that are so advanced. They're technically so, they're so difficult to pull off. And they have to be, that only works if it's ingrained in your brain. That you can't think about a movement like that. You have no time to think. You stepping back like that, or shuffling back, not even stepping back. You shuffle back and immediately come with that left hand to the solar plexus. That's something that that movement just belongs to you. That movement is just, that's just a part of who you are as a fighter. And to see a guy at 23 pulling that off against a guy who's genuine, I mean, he had Freddie Roach in his corner, so even if he's not top class, you have a guy who has a great strategist in his corner, who has experience at world level. I mean, it's very impressive, and I don't see him losing to anyone. Don't see him losing to anyone. I see him going up to 140, 147 in the future. I think he is going to be the next widely regarded pound for pound number one fighter once Terence Crawford is out of the picture. I think he's going to keep getting better, but he already looks like a finished product. I mean, he started off the fight, jabbing at a very relaxed pace. His hands are high. He has you could really see Andre Ward's tutelage when he fights. He keeps the hands up in the beginning, that left hand nice and high, jabbing with a step. Perfect coordination. It's a solid jab. He lands that. He likes to throw that left hand to the body. He counters. He counters every shot, slipping in every direction. You see him pulling and countering. You see him stepping to the left, countering. You see him stepping to the right and countering. You see him blocking. You see him moving around at times. Just a very complete performance. And I would love to see him. I think Andre Ward is doing a great job with him. And what I like about him the most, though, is his attitude. I think his attitude is just, I mean, this dude, he just wants to fight the best guys out there. He is just truly, in my opinion, he doesn't believe the hype. He is coming up under great principles. He listens. You can tell he listens to what Andre Ward has to say. And to me, Andre Ward is, he was the best when Floyd left. But right now in boxing, he's my favorite guy to listen to. He's my favorite former fighter to listen to, because you can see the intelligence. You can see you can see the thought process behind everything he says. He breaks everything down so clearly, and when he speaks, you know that he goes and and after the fights, he talks to Shakur. He tells him what he did wrong, what he can do better. He tells him how to carry himself, and is really mentoring him in a way that, shaping Shakur into a phenomenal fighter, but also into a great human being outside of the ring, with this crazy competitiveness. And I think, I'm very excited to see him. I really would love to see him fight Chris Colbert. I don't know if that's gonna happen. I hope that doesn't turn it into another Crawford-Spence situation. I don't see Shakur losing. I see him again. He has that something special that some guys have, that Crawford has, that Floyd had, that Ward had, that they just find out a way they know how to do everything. So they figure out ways to win. We haven't seen him yet with someone who actually presents issues. I think that Oscar Valdez would present issues. I think he would present some sort of problems. I think Shakur Stevenson would easily beat him though, to be fair. But I think Colbert is the other super talent in that 130-pound division. I think Tevin Farmer is also good. I think Tevin Farmer is great actually, but I think he lacks that complete. He lacks that something that Colbert and Stevenson have that completes them, which is they don't just have the skill set, but they also have that desire to actually, come forward and force the action and force the stoppage and force the win. That's why their knockout percentages are high, right? Whereas, Tevin Farmer's is low. But I would love to see Tevin Farmer in there with Chris Colbert. That's another fight that I would love. And I would love to see that 130 division unfold. Other than Colbert, they're mostly with Top Rank anyway, or with dazn. And I believe in the next 4 or 5 years, we're going to have some great fights around the 130 division. And I can't wait. Now to the big one, literally and figuratively, Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua, man, fuck. What a good performance by Anthony Joshua. To me, I think like every boxing fan out there, I think that we watched the Joshua fight and tried to find strengths and weaknesses to compare him to Tyson Fury. I think that that's the fight that everyone obviously wants. I saw on Instagram another boxing coach, he wants to see Wilder and Joshua. I think at this point Wilder is pretty far behind Joshua and Fury. I also think that Wilder is in a position where no one likes him anymore, so I don't think that Eddie Hearn is going to give him a fight with Joshua, and I don't think Bob Arum is going to give him a fight with Fury. And so I think what I like, the first thing that I noticed about Joshua is the weight he came in at, 241. And that was it, completely translated into the actual fight. You could see Joshua, and you heard the commentators on dazn talking about how Joshua used to be that seek and destroy kind of guy, and then he came in, Andy Ruiz, and just boxed rings around him. And you could clearly see that in the weight. Joshua would normally weigh above 250 and was that seek and destroy machine with that hard jab, hard right hand, hard left hook, and would just stalk his prey, right? Then at 238, he was just circling around the ring, jabbing, out boxing Ruiz, which to me was very impressive, because even though a lot of people said, you didn't really take the title back, it was an embarrassing performance, it says a lot that you can jump around the ring, or you can, glide around the ring for 12 rounds and jab, sticking to a game plan, especially if you are successful like Joshua was, not to get carried away and to stick to that game plan. That shows coachability, and that shows that's a very underrated, very important quality for a fighter, is to be able to listen to what your corner tells you, right? And so when I saw him coming in at 241, I was like, nice, he's going to be similar to what he was with Ruiz. The reason why I like that is because I believe that's the only way for him to beat Fury, and I'm going to circle back around to that after I'm done talking about Joshua's performance, which was, I think it was very good. It was much better than I expected. It took him a bit longer than I expected him to get Pulev out, but I think he could have gotten him out there earlier if I wanted to. I think he consciously used this fight as a sparring session, in the sense that we saw him do things that he never did before in fights. We saw him move his head. We saw him use his feet to set up his punches. Right? He would do that amateur, that in and out a lot, that European amateur style. He combined it with his own, with a more slower paced professional style, which was very nice. It was a very nice mixture of footwork and body movement and feints. I think he could have feinted a bit more. I think to fight Fury, you need to feint a lot more than he did. But I really liked the way he was setting up. He's jolting in and out and throwing his straight punches as he was coming in and stepping back out. I think he has a very similar style to, well, not very, but he has a lot of similarities with Vladimir Klitschko, but he doesn't just have a jab and a right hand. He has a phenomenal right uppercut, has a solid left hook, but he has a lot more willingness to trade than Klitschko, which I think is going to be good for the Fury fight. Now back to the Pulev fight, what I saw him do a lot, again, it was like a sparring session. It was very high level sparring, in the sense that you really saw him try things. You saw him throw multiple uppercuts. You saw him try to pull and count. That first knockdown was pull, counter with the right hand, right on top of the head. Beautiful work. Normally we would see him just slip and throw that counter, right? He would slip and he would throw. And for the first time we saw him jolt back, come back with the right hand, or jab, step out, right hand, right? Then when he dropped him with that uppercut, he came underneath, came up with the uppercut. Those are all things he couldn't do weighing 250 plus. So I'm glad that they stayed low in weight, and I'm pretty sure they did thinking of Fury, because to beat Fury, right? This is the issue with Tyson Fury that most people don't seem to see, which I don't understand, because I believe it's right in front of everyone. But it was the same thing when he fought Wilder, right? Everyone thought, Wilder has this crazy right hand and he's gonna land it. But what people don't understand is both Wilder and Joshua were fighting limited guys, in the sense that they either were shorter than them, or if you have a guy like Brazil who's the same height, he didn't have the feet to move. So or the head movement to move out of the way of punches, or the reflexes to move out of the head, out of the way of those shots, right? So it's easy for a guy, for a guy like Joshua who sets up his right hand with a nice jab, right? That's all he needs to land it against a guy who isn't moving his head or doesn't have the speed to move his feet, right? Fury is constantly feinting, he's constantly moving. So Joshua at 250 wouldn't have the foot speed and the athleticism to chase Fury around the ring. He needs to lose weight because the power isn't like... Joshua has the power to knock you out. It doesn't matter if he weighs 250 or 230. It just doesn't matter. He's always going to have the edge and power in that fight. Joshua doesn't have the reach that Fury has, and he doesn't have the footwork or the reflexes that Fury has, right? What Joshua does have, he has beautiful tight combinations, best combination puncher in the heavyweight division, apart from Andy Ruiz probably. But he throws his combinations tight, so that hook comes from here. It doesn't come from out here, right? Learning to move your head now is going to help him get in Tyson Fury's range. And those tight combinations that Fury doesn't have, because Fury does throw his shots a bit wide. He slaps them and they come from all weird angles, but they don't have that much. They don't carry the same kind of power because his feet are always moving about, right? His hands are normally open when he's throwing his shots, right? But Joshua being 250 and static, he will get hit with these shots all night long. Fury would jab his head off, and Joshua doesn't have that incredible athleticism that Wilder has to just throw a right hand that is basically 100 feet long and fast, and his whole body is coming in quick and landing it. I mean, that's what happened with Fury in that 12th round, right, of the first fight. He just poured with the jab and immediately covered like 2 feet distance with that right hand and just threw that right hand over the top. And Fury was leaning back instead of leaning in, how he was doing it all night. He leaned back, shot caught him right on the chin. While Joshua doesn't have that kind of speed to jump in range, he also doesn't feint as much, right? Especially at 250. Now though, what he was doing against Pulev, moving his upper body, moving his head, looking for angles, moving around. Now all of a sudden Fury's going to have to move a lot more because Joshua has more foot speed. Joshua has more, has more sides to him, there's more facets to his game. Now, if he adds a feint to what he did yesterday, he's all of a sudden going to be able to move his feet to get him into the range, to cut off the ring for when Fury's going to move. He's going to be able to feint, get under Fury's punches and throw combinations, which is what Klitschko wasn't able to do against Fury, right? Klitschko standing up too straight just with a jab and with a right hand he never landed anything on Fury. And I believe Joshua would have had the same problem Klitschko did with Fury if he were to fight the way he fought his whole career leading up to his whole career before the second Ruiz fight. I think that now with these new aspects they added to his game, I think those are all looking for the Fury fight, thinking of the Fury fight. I'm very glad they did it because now all of a sudden it's a very competitive fight because Joshua has, sublime fundamentals. He has learned on the job. Eddie Hearn has matched him perfectly. So he's a very confident fighter. He's a very strong fighter. And now with these new moves, I believe he can truly present a problem for Fury. I don't think he beats Fury. I don't think Fury fights Joshua the same way he fought Wilder though. I think Fury will fight the same fight against Joshua that he fought against Klitschko and then he fought against Wilder the first time out. But I think that Joshua has obviously out of all the heavyweights the most chance of beating him. I think I would like to see him come even down a little bit further, back down to like 235, 238, where he can really, use his foot speed, which I bet he has faster feet than Fury. I bet if Joshua actually worked on that, I believe he's a more athletic guy. And Fury, even though he moves like a middleweight, he's still 273. And he has skinny legs. He doesn't, I bet on a foot race, on a 100-meter race, on a 50-meter race, I bet Joshua smokes Fury. And I bet Joshua, if he really worked on his feet, could have plenty foot speed, plenty of foot coordination to actually get to Fury, right? So that is for sure the biggest fight to be made, in my opinion, 2021. Fury Joshua is, that's the fight, along with Errol Spence and Terence Crawford, obviously. But yeah, that was it for the weekend. We'll be back. I'll be back Thursday to talk about the upcoming fights this weekend, Canelo and Triple G. Then we also have, again, on PBC, we have Jaron Ennis, who's another phenomenal prospect who I cannot wait to watch. But yeah, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Obviously helps the channel grow. But also please comment. Obviously first episode for me, being in front of a camera, I'm not used to it. I would love to hear your opinion on my opinion, and I would love to get into some debates. I will for sure, if there's any comments, I will for sure, if there's anything interesting, if you have a different point of view, if you liked it, if you dislike it, if you think that I don't know shit about boxing, comment it and tell me why, and I will speak on it next time on Thursday. Have a great week. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and stay safe.